How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all keeping well. Just gonna create another video here. It's about a book I stumbled across probably 2 years ago now. It's called Spark, and it's by an author called John J. Ratey. And there's a chapter in it, anxiety. It's probably around 30 pages, and it's absolutely incredible because when I overcame anxiety through basically, it was anxiety, panic attacks and agoraphobia. I overcame it through vigorous exercise, through running. I started off jogging 1k, 2k, and then ended up jogging miles from home, and eventually just, that's gonna cure your agoraphobia, isn't it? Running into the panic attacks and stuff like that. So after 10 years chasing my tail, I tried everything. And a couple of, you hear about this exercise and mental health, and we don't really think much into it. We know it works a little bit or whatever, but this completely reshaped my mind because I took it to a next level. I didn't just exercise, I went from jogging, being afraid to jog 1 to 2k around my house, because I had agoraphobia, and I just, wanted to be close to safety and stuff like that. And, so I started off jogging 1 to 2k, and then eventually I just got fed up of how resistant I am to jogging further and how much this has taken over my life. So one day I decided to just run anywhere. I ended up jogging around 10k, and 10k was the furthest I've been away from my house for probably around a year or two, because I wasn't getting in cars and buses and doing anything with my life. The last 2 years of that disorder was the worst. So yeah, I eventually jogged 10k for the first time in my life, and I got home, and the effects were immediate. Number one, I had such a profound feeling of achievement, going far away from home for the first time in a long time. And then with that, then I didn't jog 10k for a while after that, but I jogged a lot, like maybe 4, 3, 6k's, and I kept doing it repetitively. So eventually then I moved up, and one of the days after around 3 to 4 weeks, I ran out to a place called Holt, back in Dublin, and it took me it was almost 25k up and back because I went a long way, and it took me 25k, and I couldn't believe it. How I felt, like I couldn't, like with agoraphobia, afraid to go away from a safe place, and here I was, like a good bit away from home, and I was sitting up at this place, I just chilled out having coffee because I burnt all my adrenaline now. And I can't really explain it, you have to go through it to fully understand what I'm talking about. And, anyone out there who has agoraphobia know exactly what I'm talking about. Panic attacks really end your life, and they can make you become housebound and scared of basically everything, But again, it took me like 4 months to fully recover, and I used this method of vigorous exercise, jogging. And literally, I still can't believe it to this day that it worked, but it did. So I found this, I started to research then, how is that possible after trying everything for 10 years? How is this possible? But number one, it was consistent. 4 months consistent, not doing it one day and then stopping for a week and still being in fear. It forced me to give up the fear sensations, because when I was jogging through anxiety, when I was jogging long distance from home, I'd always have a panic attack away from home, always. And eventually, after maybe 2 to 3 weeks consistently feeling that and just pushing through it and not having any of these ritualistic behaviours of going home, calling anybody, I rewired my brain, and explained exactly what I'd done in this book. Funny enough, I came across it. I was out my back doing a workout one of the days, and I was listening to a podcast, and this book came on, and this chapter came up, but just magically, and I started talking about agoraphobia and anxiety disorders and exercise, and I couldn't believe it. It was like something, so many of these situations have happened in my life anyway, where you feel so guided. Never heard this book at all ever before in my life. And even reading the start of it, Spark, the revolutionary new science of exercise in the brain. Even reading that title, it's so interesting, but I never would have picked it up because it didn't say anything about anxiety disorders or anything like that. I never knew there was a beautiful chapter in here about anxiety, panic attacks and agoraphobia, and how this guy basically healed so many people through the method that I used. So it's just crazy when you think about it. And I'm gonna read some chapters. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go through the book, and there's parts that I underlined that I wanna just suggest to you guys that, number one, I should definitely suggest that you go read it. But I'm gonna have a couple of things underlined there, so I'm gonna talk through them and just give my own input on them and just basically explain in my own terms what I've done through my own story. And yeah, I'll just crack on now, guys. So first chapter is anxiety, and nothing to panic about. So everything, I do this with all my books. If I'm reading a book, I always underline stuff that means something to me. So it's basically just like the first thing I underline, but often panic disorder turns into generalized anxiety disorder due to the fear of the next attack. So I underlined that a long time ago. And stuff like both regimes tend to reduce anxiety sensitivity, but rigorous exercise worked more quickly and effectively. Only the high intensity group felt less afraid of the physical symptoms of anxiety. So this guy is putting people through an experiment. He'd have people jog with their increasing heart rate up to 60, and then another one jog to the heart rate up to 90. So a lot more rigorous than the 60 to 90. And so he said that basically the high intensity group felt less afraid of the physical symptoms of anxiety. Because when we're jogging, that's a panic attack. It's the same feelings. When you're jogging and your heart rate and you're sweating, that's panic. You know, we don't call it a panic attack when we're jogging, do we? It's just jogging, and our body's just doing a natural thing. And that's our behaviours and what we've been taught over the years. No one ever told us this, like, you know. So anyway, it says this is a key finding, given the notion of anxiety as a cognitive misinterpretation. It's a big one there, cognitive misinterpretation. That's exactly what it is. So by using exercise to combat the symptoms of anxiety, you can treat the state. And as your level of fitness improves, you chip away at the trait. Over time, you teach the brain that the symptoms don't always spell doom and that you can survive. You're reprogramming the cognitive misinterpretation. And that's just beautiful, like, seriously. You know, but that's exactly what you're doing. Over time, you're teaching the brain that the symptoms don't always spell doom and that you can survive. You're reprogramming the cognitive misinterpretation. See, guys, anxiety disorders are behavioural conditions. And that's what they are, you know, they're not mental illnesses, you know, and it's a mental health issue, absolutely. But it's not mental illness. You're not going to go like worse than anxiety attacks and agoraphobia. You don't really get worse than that, you know. That's the peak. You don't stem over and turn like into a psychotic disorder or something like that, you know. It never happens. It's totally on the opposite of the spectrum. You don't go crazy either or nuts. So yeah, I just think that's a beautiful. I had to really underline that it's the notion of anxiety as a cognitive misinterpretation. And when you study CBT therapy and stuff like that, and there's probably some people that have done CBT and some therapists who follow me as well, and they'll, you know, one of the things is cognitive misinterpretations. You're very aware of that phrase. So these are the things I just started underlining. So a few more seconds and I'll skip to something else, guys. So yeah, you're just basically retraining the brain, you know. And yeah, I'll just have small little things underlined, like exercise also produce calming chemical changes. We know that, so that doesn't really make sense. But chapter here, fear itself. Anxiety is fear, but what is fear? In neurological terms, fear is the memory of danger. If we suffer from an anxiety disorder, the brain constantly replays that memory, forcing us to live in that fear. Make what you want of that, guys. So basically it goes through everything. Like, it talks about so many scientific things, and you know, we're going to talk about the amygdala and stuff like that. So basically, left unchecked, the overexcited amygdala tags too many situations as challenges to survival and burns them into memory. The fear memories from connections with each other. The fear memory forms connections with each other, and the anxiety snowballs. Eventually, the amygdala overwhelms attempts by the hippocampus to tone down the flight or fight response, putting the fear into context. As the snowball grows and the more and more memories become associated with fear, your world shrinks. So that's basically what I'm talking about with the behavioural condition. You have a panic attack, and this fear memory, it's such a profound experience having a panic attack. It's so scary. A lot of people end up in emergency rooms and stuff like that in hospitals, like, over a panic attack, because they don't know what's going on with them. You think you're having a heart attack, you think you're going nuts, and eventually you just want to go up and get checked out. And you walk out normal, always. And that's what it is. It's such a profound experience that some people can have a panic attack, one of them, and then that's it, done. not really, doesn't affect them. But some people like myself, I just feared them. I just couldn't stand that feeling. I started to avoid everything. And again, habits are so powerful that, you know, I had no understanding what this was. So when I got understanding of what I was a couple of years later, I was still stuck on all these bad, horrible habits that was so hard to break, you know. So we'll continue on. This is a long chapter. I didn't necessarily underline this. I put certain the pain of panic. Yeah, so basically he says here, panic is the most painful form of anxiety, and it illustrates in the extreme how paralyzing any of its family of disorders can be. When I first came across a case of panic disorder, I was shocked at how debilitating it was. I was a third-year psychiatric resident at Massachusetts Mental Health Center, so I was working there. And I was also seeing patients at outlying social services. So, you know, this guy was helping people and he was starting off on his journey in mental health. A woman had been dragged in by her husband because she was depressed and all, but refused to leave the house. She had been to emergency rooms on more than one occasion for what felt like was a heart attack. She described in vivid detail how she had been certain she was dying. Each time the doctor reported to her that her heart was fine, she started to wonder if she was crazy.